The last thing I remember is my kitchen floor rushing up at my face. The next thing I heard was a nurse telling me my own daughter had said, "I'm busy. If the old man dies, call me. I'm not interested in him alive." If you woke up to that sentence with your name on the chart, what would you do? Before you answer, read this all the way through and tell me if you think I went too far. My name is Adam Sheffield. I'm 68 years old, a grandfather twice over, and I spent most of my life believing family loyalty was something you could earn by showing up. I was wrong, and I learned it while I was still strapped to a hospital bed, staring at a ceiling tile that looked like stained snow. I had been alone when I dropped. No drug drink, no altered medication, no villain with a syringe. Just a heart that finally decided it was done being ignored. It happened on a Tuesday morning, the kind that looks harmless until it isn't. I'd been awake since before sunrise, not because I'm some heroic early riser, but because my body doesn't know how to rest anymore. I'd made oatmeal I barely ate. I'd watered the plants my late wife used to talk to like they were pets. And I'd checked my phone for the same reason a man checks a locked door twice. Claire. My daughter's name is Claire Sheffield, and even writing it makes my tongue feel heavy. She used to call me Dad with warmth. These days she said it the way people say sir when they're pretending to respect you. I'd promised my granddaughter Lily I'd come to her school assembly that afternoon. Lily is 10 and she still believes a grandfather is something sturdy, something that doesn't break. I'd promised my grandson Jonah I'd fix the loose step on their back porch because he'd tripped on it the week before and Claire had snapped at him like the bruised knee was an inconvenience. I live in a quiet part of Ohio now. Maple trees, dog walkers, neighbors who wave. I used to think that meant peace. It just means the silence is louder. I remember standing at the counter, staring at my coffee as if it could tell me whether the tightness in my chest was stress or warning. I remember thinking I'd call Claire to ask if she needed anything before I came by later, because that's what I always did. I remember hearing my own voice in my head before I even dialed. Do not bother her. I dialed anyway. It rang. It rang again. It went to voicemail. I left the shortest message possible. It's Dad. I'll be by after lunch. I'll take Lily to the assembly. Call me if that doesn't work. Then I tried to swallow past that tightness in my chest, and the world tipped. There's a special kind of fear in the moment you realize you can't make your own hands work. I felt my knees soften, felt my shoulder hit the cabinet, heard a sound like a plate breaking even though nothing broke. I opened my mouth to shout, and no sound came out. My body folded the way paper folds when you crease it. The last thing I saw was the edge of the kitchen rug, the faded pattern my wife had chosen because it reminded her of her grandmother's house. Then black. Later, I learned a neighbor had seen my blinds still closed at noon and thought it was unusual because I never missed a day opening them. She knocked, listened, heard nothing, and called 911. Paramedics forced the door. I was told my skin was clammy and my pulse was thready. I was told my blood pressure was frightening. I was told my heart had been playing roulette for months and I'd finally landed on the wrong number. I woke up in pieces. First came sound, a soft beeping, a distant cough, shoes squeaking on linoleum. Then smell, antiseptic and plastic. Then sensation, the itch of tape on my arm, the tug of wires on my chest, the dryness in my mouth like I'd been chewing cotton. I opened my eyes and the room swam. A nurse noticed, came closer, and said my name slowly like she was bringing me back from a cliff. Mr. Sheffield, Adam, can you hear me? I nodded. It was a tiny movement, but it felt like lifting a truck. She smiled, professional, practiced. Good. You gave us a scare. We've been trying to reach your emergency contact. My mouth didn't want to form words. I forced it. Claire. The nurse's smile didn't disappear, but it changed. The corners held while the eyes did something else. Yes, she said. Your daughter. A doctor came in soon after, tall, calm. The kind of man who learned how to speak in measured sentences because panic spreads faster than infection. He told me I'd had a cardiac event. Not a full arrest, but close enough to make everyone in that room take me seriously. He told me the next 48 hours mattered. Then he said, "We called your daughter." It wasn't his tone that warned me. It was the pause after. The pause people use when they're deciding how honest to be. I swallowed and felt pain bloom like a bruise. "She's on her way?" Another pause. The doctor looked at the nurse. The nurse looked back. And then, with the bluntness of someone who refuses to sugarcoat cruelty, the nurse said it. She told us, "I'm busy. If the old man dies, call me. I'm not interested in him alive." For a second I thought I'd misheard. I stared at her. I waited for the correction, the laugh, the explanation that it had been a prank, a misunderstanding, someone else. Nothing came. My body did something strange. My heart monitor spiked, the beeping quickened, and the doctor lifted a hand calming me with his voice. But it wasn't my heart failing this time. It was something quieter, something inside me folding in on itself. I turned my head toward the window because I didn't want them to see my face. I didn't want a nurse to pity me. I didn't want a doctor to soften his voice like I was a child. But pity isn't the worst thing. The worst thing is realizing you raised the person who just said you were only worth a phone call if you were dead. The nurse must have thought she'd gone too far, because she added, "I'm sorry, Mr. Sheffield." Sorry didn't fit in my throat. I whispered, Did she really say that?" The doctor nodded once. Those were her words. He didn't offer opinions. Doctors learn quickly that families can be disasters, and their job is to keep bodies alive, not relationships. But I could see it in his eyes. Disgust. Not at me. At her. I lay there that night staring at the ceiling tile again. I watched the slow crawl of the second hand on the wall clock. I listened to the beeps. I thought about Claire at 7 years old, with a scraped chin, sitting on my kitchen counter while I dabbed her cut with a damp cloth, and she cried into my shoulder. I thought about Claire at 16, slamming her bedroom door, calling me controlling, and me waiting outside it anyway just to make sure she was breathing on the other side. I thought about paying for her college, helping with her first car, the wedding I covered when her mother was too sick to enjoy any of it, holding her hand in the hospital when she delivered Lily. And I thought about the fact that when I was the one on a hospital bed, she couldn't spare a minute unless I was already gone. I didn't sleep. In the morning, a different nurse came in. Her name tag read Marisol. She checked my vitals, adjusted my IV, and spoke gently without treating me like glass. Before she left, she hesitated by the door and said quietly, "Your chart notes what was said on the phone. We document everything." I turned my head. "It's written down." She nodded. "Yes. Time, date, who spoke, what was said. It's part of the record." I didn't say anything for a long moment. My mind felt like an engine turning over for the first time after winter. "Can I see it?" I asked. Marisol shook her head. "Not like that, but you can request your records. You have a right." I stared at my hands. They were old hands. Veins visible. Fingers thick from decades of fixing things. I'd always been proud of my hands because they built a life. Now they trembled. Not from fear, from clarity. Because Claire's sentence didn't come out of nowhere. It didn't belong to a loving daughter having a bad day. It belonged to a woman who had already made up her mind about what I was. A burden, an obstacle, a delay. That afternoon, my phone lit up with a missed call. Claire. No voicemail. A text followed 30 seconds later. Saw I had missed calls. What hospital? No, are you okay? No, I'm coming. Just location, like she was checking where her package had been delivered. I replied with 2 words, still alive. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Then, busy. Let me know if things change. I read it until my eyes burned. That evening, Dr. Nguyen came in again. He asked how I felt. He asked if I had support at home. He asked if I had someone who could stay with me the first few nights after discharge. I surprised myself with how steady my voice sounded. "I do," I said, because I did, not Claire. But I had a man named Hank who'd been my friend for 35 years, the kind of friend who shows up without being asked. I had a neighbor named Mrs. Calder who had a key to my house and the nosiness of a bloodhound. I had a retired EMT buddy who owed me a favor and didn't ask questions. And I had something else. I had proof that my daughter didn't care whether I lived. The next day, Claire finally appeared, not because I was stable, not because she wanted to sit beside my bed, because someone told her I had complications. That word has a gravity to it. It smells like inheritance. She walked into my room wearing a beige coat and expensive boots like the hallway was a runway. Her hair was perfect. Her nails were perfect. Her face had the right expression. Concern painted on like makeup. Behind her walked her husband, Brent Harlow, holding a coffee like he'd stopped for it on the way to a meeting. Brent always looked at me the same way a man looks at a fence he plans to climb over. Measuring, impatient, already annoyed that it exists. Claire stepped to my bed, took my hand, and squeezed like she was practicing for an audience. "Dad," she said softly. "Oh my God. I was so worried." I didn't move my hand. I let her hold it, because in that moment, I understood something I hadn't wanted to see. She wasn't holding my hand. She was holding my pulse. Brent leaned in slightly. "How bad was it?" Not, "How are you?" Not, "That must have been scary." Just severity. I looked at my daughter's face. I searched for the child I remembered. I saw a stranger wearing her skin. "I'm alive," I said. Claire's eyes flicked just for a second toward the heart monitor, as if confirming. "Yes," she breathed. And that single word carried disappointment so fast she didn't even catch herself. Then she corrected it. "Thank God." Brent cleared his throat. "So what's the plan? When can he go home?" Claire sat in the chair beside the bed, still holding my hand. "Dad, you scared me. You can't be alone. You can't do this to us. Do this to us." Like my body failing was a personal attack. I said, "The nurse told me what you said when the doctor called." Claire's hand tightened. Her face didn't crack. Not yet. But her eyes sharpened. "I don't know what you mean," she said. I kept my voice calm. "They called you. You said you were busy. You said if I died, call you. You weren't interested in me alive." Brent's eyebrows rose slightly. He looked at Claire like he was waiting for her to handle it. Claire's mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. "That's not what I meant," she said finally. "Dad, I was in a meeting. You know how my job is." I watched her carefully. She didn't deny the words. She just tried to explain them away. "You meant it," I said. Claire's expression hardened, just for a fraction of a second, and then she softened it again as if she caught herself. "Dad," she whispered, "please don't do this right now." Brent shifted his weight. "We're here now. That's what matters." It wasn't what mattered, but I nodded slightly, because I wasn't done learning how far they were willing to go. Over the next week, my body recovered faster than my mind. Physical pain is honest. It hurts, and then it fades. Betrayal doesn't fade. It changes shape. It follows you into sleep. It waits for you in silence. Claire visited twice more. Each time she brought Brent. Each time they asked more questions about my house, my bills, the paperwork, the plans. The third time, Claire set a folder on my tray table like she was setting down a dessert menu. "Dad," she said, voice gentle, "we need to talk about safety." I stared at the folder. On the front, in neat printed letters, "Care Plan." Inside were pages about assisted living facilities, costs, tours, a brochure with smiling seniors playing cards. My stomach turned. "You already chose a place," I said. Claire blinked. We just want options. Brent pointed to a line on one sheet. This one has good ratings. Ratings. Like my life was a product. I looked up at Claire. You're trying to put me away. Her smile became brittle. Dad, stop. You're being dramatic. Brent added, You collapsed alone. That's a fact. I took a slow breath. My chest still ached if I breathed too deep. It grounded me, kept me from doing something impulsive. I promised Lily I'd be at her assembly, I said. Claire waved a hand. We can handle the kids. The kids, not my grandchildren, not Lily and Jonah. The kids. A thought stabbed through me. You use them like bargaining chips, I said quietly. Claire's eyes flashed. That is not fair. Brent leaned closer, tone firm. Adam, we're trying to help you, but we also need to be realistic. If something happens again, decisions have to be made quickly. Decisions. I looked at the folder again and saw a page clipped behind the brochures. Power of attorney. My vision sharpened so suddenly it felt like pain. Claire noticed. She slid the page halfway under another paper. Too late. You came with paperwork, I said. Claire's throat moved as she swallowed. Dad, it's just in case. In case I can't speak for myself, I said. Brent smiled like a man trying to soothe an animal before he loads it into a crate. Exactly. I stared at them for a long moment, then nodded. Okay, I said. Claire's shoulders loosened. Relief. Brent's eyes brightened, greed hiding behind practicality. Claire reached for my hand again. You'll see. This is for the best. And I let her think she'd won. Because here is the truth no one tells you about being an old man. People assume you're slow because you move slowly. They assume you're confused because you take your time. They assume you're weak because your hands shake. They forget that you lived long enough to see patterns. They forget that you survived decades of problems that would crush them. They forget that the most dangerous man in a room is often the one everyone underestimates. I spent the next 2 days in the hospital acting tired, acting grateful, letting them talk. When Claire wasn't in the room, I asked Dr. Nguyen a simple question. Can you tell me what was documented from that phone call? He looked at me for a long moment, then said, You can request your records. But I can tell you this. The statement was recorded in the notes exactly as relayed by staff. Time and date? I asked. Yes. I nodded. That was enough. When I was discharged, Claire insisted I stay at her house for safety. She said it like she was being kind, but I saw the way Brent watched me sign discharge papers, the way his eyes followed my hands. He wanted my signature more than he wanted my health. I told Claire I'd stay for 1 week. Just until I get my strength back, I said. She agreed quickly. Too quickly. Her house smelled like expensive candles and impatience. The living room had a perfect couch no one seemed allowed to sit on. Photos on the wall showed Claire and Brent smiling in front of places they had visited, places I had helped pay for without ever being asked. Lily and Jonah ran to me the first evening and hugged me so hard I almost cried. Their small arms felt like rope pulling me back to something good. Claire watched from the kitchen, her smile fixed. Brent stood behind her, arms crossed, evaluating. That night I didn't sleep much. I listened to the house settle. I listened to Brent's footsteps overhead. I listened to my own heartbeat like it was a timer counting down. On the 3rd day, I saw it. Claire left her laptop open on the kitchen counter while she went to pick up Jonah from soccer. Brent was in the garage on the phone, voice low. I wasn't snooping. I wasn't hunting. I was walking slowly to get water, still moving like a man recovering. But the screen caught my eye. An email draft. Subject: Estate and Transition Plan. My name. My address. My account numbers blurred out, but not enough. I stared at it. My heart hammered. Not from weakness. From rage. There were bullet points. Facility placement. Home sale timing. Liquid assets consolidation. A line that made my skin go cold. Obituary prepared. Notification list ready. Obituary. Prepared. Ready. I stood there, one hand gripping the counter, and I understood the full shape of what was happening. They weren't afraid I would die. They were annoyed I hadn't yet. Second hook. That night I heard Brent in the garage again, laughing softly as he said, "If he goes fast, we're clean. If he lingers, we have to force the paperwork." And in that moment I realized I hadn't walked into my daughter's home to recover. I had walked into a waiting room for my own funeral. I backed away from the counter and went to the guest room quietly, moving like a man afraid of breaking glass. I sat on the bed and stared at the wall. Then I made 2 phone calls. The first was to Hank. He answered on the second ring. "Adam? I need you," I said. There was a pause, then the kind of calm only old friends have. "Tell me where you are." The second call was to Mrs. Calder, my neighbor. She didn't even let me finish explaining before she said, "I'm already furious." By sunrise, my plan was in motion. Not a legal plan, not courtrooms, not filings, not restraining orders. Something older, something simpler. A trap made of truth. I played my part. I shuffled more. I sighed more. I let Claire help me up the stairs like I might crumble. I thanked Brent for driving me to a follow-up appointment even though he drove like a man late to a deal closing. At the doctor's office, I asked Claire to step out so I could speak privately with Dr. Nguyen. She hesitated. "Dad, I should stay." "I need to speak to him alone," I said, quietly but firm. Claire's face tightened. Then she smiled again. "Of course." When she left, I leaned toward Dr. Nguyen and told him the truth in a few sentences. My daughter's comment, the paperwork, the obituary line. He listened without interrupting. His jaw clenched at the end. "I can't give you advice on family matters," he said carefully. "I'm not asking for advice," I said. "I'm asking you to do one thing." He waited. "Call her," I said. "Tell her my condition took a turn. Tell her there's a possibility I won't make it through the weekend." Dr. Nguyen's eyes narrowed. "Mr. Sheffield." "I'm not asking you to lie about my medical record," I said. "I'm asking you to use the same vague language she uses when she says she's busy. Let her show you who she is again, on the record. Let her repeat it." He stared at me for a long moment, then exhaled. "I can say your situation is unstable," he said. "That is true. Your heart is still at risk." "That's enough," I said. On Friday evening, Claire's phone rang. I watched her face change as she listened, a shadow of excitement, then a careful mask. "I understand," she said softly. "Yes. Call me if anything changes." She hung up and turned toward Brent. "It's worse," she whispered. Brent's eyes widened. "How worse?" Claire swallowed. "They said he might not." Brent didn't let her finish. He grabbed his keys. "We need to get things signed, tonight." Claire glanced toward the hallway where Lily and Jonah were watching cartoons. "We can't do it here," she said. Brent's mouth tightened. "We can do it anywhere." And that's when I knew I had them, because loving people hear unstable and think, how do we comfort him? Predators hear unstable and think, how do we harvest him? They waited until the kids were asleep. Then they came into the guest room with the folder. Claire sat on the edge of the bed like a nurse. Brent stood behind her like a guard. Claire spoke softly. "Dad, we need to take care of a few things, just in case." I looked at the folder with tired eyes, the best acting I've done in my life. "I don't want to die," I whispered. Claire's face flickered, not sympathy, impatience. "We're not saying you will," she said quickly. But we need to be responsible. Brent slid a pen onto the bedspread. Just sign, then you can rest. I lifted my hand slowly. I let it shake. I let them lean forward. I let Claire guide the paper into place like she was doing me a favor. And then I asked softly, "If I die, will you come?" Claire's eyes darted away. "Dad?" "Will you come?" I repeated. Brent answered for her, voice flat. "Yes." Claire nodded. "Of course." It was a lie so casual it almost impressed me. I signed. Not everything. Not blindly. Just enough to satisfy their hunger. They left the room with the folder, whispers trailing behind them like smoke. The moment their footsteps faded, my phone vibrated. One text from Hank. In position. One from Mrs. Calder. "Your house is safe." I lay back on the pillow and stared into the dark. I didn't sleep, because revenge isn't a rush. It's a slow tightening. A knot you pull until the person who tried to hang you with it realizes it's around their own neck. Saturday morning, Claire woke me early. "Dad," she said gently, "we're having a little family dinner tonight." I blinked like I didn't understand. "Why?" "Because," she said, "everyone's been worried. We want to support you." Support? Her favorite word when she meant control. I nodded. "Okay." She smiled. "Good. Hank is coming too, right? Your friend?" I watched her carefully. "Yes." She didn't know Hank was coming for her, not for me. By evening, their dining room was full. Brent's parents arrived first, all polished smiles and polite distance. Then Claire's friends from her job at a nonprofit. People who spoke in warm voices and wore concern like jewelry. Hank arrived quietly and took a seat near the end of the table, looking like an older man with kind eyes. Claire's boss, a woman named Denise, came because Claire had invited her. Claire said it was to show how close their work family was. Denise smiled at me and said, "Adam, it's nice to meet you. Claire speaks so highly of you." Claire's face tightened for a fraction of a second, like she'd forgotten she was supposed to pretend. I watched Lily and Jonah eat quietly, glancing at me now and then, sensing something they couldn't name. The dinner started normal, too normal. Claire talked about work. Brent talked about opportunities. Brent's father talked about the stock market like it was a religion. People laughed at safe jokes. I waited. Halfway through the meal, Claire stood and tapped her glass. "I just want to say," she began, voice sweet, "how grateful we are that Dad is still here. This week has reminded us how fragile life is." She looked toward me, eyes glossy, the performance perfect. "If something had happened," she continued, "we would have been devastated. Devastated." My hands tightened around my napkin. Then she said, "Dad, would you like to say something?" My chair creaked as I stood. My heart thumped steadily. Not weak, not failing, alive. Every eye turned to me. This was the moment Claire wanted, a frail father thanking his daughter for saving him, a story she could use later. I looked at Lily first. I smiled at her. I looked at Jonah. I nodded once. Then I looked at Claire. "I was taken to the hospital unconscious," I said calmly. "The doctors called my daughter." Claire's smile stayed in place. I continued. She told them, "I'm busy. If the old man dies, call me. I'm not interested in him alive." Silence fell like a dropped curtain. Someone's fork clinked against a plate. Claire's face went pale, then flushed red. She opened her mouth. "Dad!" I lifted a hand. "I'm not finished." Hank stood and walked to the sideboard, where a small speaker sat. Claire's speaker, the one she used for music. Hank pressed a button. A voice filled the room. Claire's voice. Clear, cold, unmistakable. "I'm busy. If the old man dies, call me. I'm not interested in him alive." It played once. Then Hank pressed a button again. It played a second time. Denise's eyes went wide. Brent's mother lifted a hand to her mouth. Brent stared at Claire as if seeing her for the first time. Claire's chair scraped back. "That is out of context." I looked around the room. "That audio," I said, "came from the hospital's call system. Documented, time-stamped. Staff witnessed it. And I requested my records." Claire's mouth worked like she was trying to swallow the truth and choke it down. Brent's voice came out low. "You said you were in a meeting." Claire spun on him. "I was." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. "I collapsed alone," I said. "No one did that to me. My heart did it. But what you did afterward, that was choice. That was character." Claire's eyes shone with anger. "You're humiliating me." "Yes," I said quietly. "Because you tried to erase me." Denise stood slowly, her chair legs dragging. "Claire, is this real?" Claire's face twisted. "He's confused. He's sick." "Don't," Denise snapped, sharper than I expected. "Do not hide behind his health." Brent's father cleared his throat awkwardly. "Maybe we should—" "No," I said. "Sit. This is the part where the truth finishes speaking." I turned toward Brent. "While I've been recovering in your home," I said, "I saw the plan you two were drafting. Assisted living, home sale, obituary." Brent's face changed. Not guilt, calculation. "That's private," he said. "It was on my daughter's laptop," I replied. "In the kitchen, next to my water glass. In the home you said was for my safety." Claire shook her head wildly. "That was planning. That was responsible." I nodded slowly. "Planning my death before you planned my care." Lily's small voice cut through the room. "Mom?" Claire flinched as if Lily had slapped her. I looked at my granddaughter. "Sweetheart, you and Jonah go upstairs with Hank for a minute." Hank moved quickly, gentle, guiding the kids away. Claire started to stand. "No, they should stay," Denise snapped. "Let them go." Claire froze. The moment the kids were out of sight, I reached into my pocket and placed one envelope on the table. "I'm leaving tonight," I said. "I'm going back to my house." Claire laughed sharply, desperate. "Dad, you can't be alone." "I won't be," I said. "But I won't be with you." Brent leaned forward. "What is this about, Adam? If this is about money—" "It's always about money with you," I said. Brent's jaw tightened. "Watch your tone." I held his gaze. My voice stayed calm. "You came into my hospital room and asked how bad it was," I said. "Not how I felt, not if I was scared. You asked how bad it was." Brent glanced at the others, realizing the room wasn't his anymore. I slid a second envelope onto the table. "This one," I said, "is for Denise. It contains something else Claire forgot to close." Claire's eyes widened. "No." Denise hesitated, then took the envelope with slow caution. Inside was a printed copy of the email draft. Denise read it. Her face tightened, jaw hard. "This is—" Denise whispered, then looked at Claire with a disgust that made Claire shrink. "You invited me here." Claire's voice broke. "I didn't—" Denise held up the paper. "You were preparing to sell his house while he was still alive." Brent stood, angry now. "This is ridiculous. We were trying to protect the family." I pointed to him. "You were trying to protect your access." Claire's hands shook. "Dad, please. You're blowing up our lives." I stared at her. "You already blew up mine," I said, "in one sentence." I placed a third envelope on the table. "This one," I said, "is for you, Claire." She didn't touch it. I continued. "Inside is a key." Brent's eyes flicked to it. Claire whispered, "To what?" "My house," I said. "The locks were changed this morning." Claire's mouth fell open. Brent snapped, "You can't do that. Our things are there." "You'll have access," I said. "Tomorrow, between 10 and noon. Hank will be there. Mrs. Calder will be there. You will take only what belongs to you. Claire's face twisted. You're evicting your own daughter. I'm removing strangers from my home, I said quietly, because a daughter doesn't wait for her father's death like it's an appointment. Brent took a step toward me. Adam, you're making a mistake. Hank's voice came from the hallway, closer now, calm but heavy. Sit down, Brent. Brent froze, seeing Hank not as an old friend but as a wall. Claire's voice rose. What about Lily and Jonah? My chest tightened at their names. I love them, I said. I will always love them. They will always be welcome with me, but you will never again use them as leverage. Claire's eyes flashed. You can't take them from me. I'm not taking them, I said. I'm offering them a safe place when you're done using them as props. Denise stepped back from the table as if the air had turned poisonous. Claire, I need you to leave. We'll talk at work Monday. Claire stared, panic rising. Denise, please. Denise shook her head. You brought me into a house to watch you dismantle your father. You thought it would make you look good. It made you look cruel. Brent's mother stood abruptly. Brent, we're leaving. Brent's father followed, face stiff with humiliation. One by one, people stood and backed away from the table like it was burning. Claire stayed seated, trembling, eyes locked on me. Dad, she whispered, and for the first time that week, it sounded almost real. Please. I looked at her for a long moment. I remembered her scraped chin. I remembered her teenage door slams. I remembered the day she handed me Lily and cried because she was overwhelmed and I promised I'd always be there. And then I remembered the sentence. I'm not interested in him alive. I leaned forward slightly. You said you weren't interested in me alive, I said. Tonight, I'm returning the favor. Her face collapsed, not into remorse, but into fear. Fear of consequences. That's not the same thing. I walked out of that dining room with my back straight and my heartbeat steady. Hank drove me home. Mrs. Calder had every light on, like she was guarding a fortress. She hugged me at the door and whispered, I'm proud of you. I slept in my own bed that night, the first real sleep I'd had since the kitchen floor. In the weeks that followed, Claire tried every tactic she had. Tears, anger, blame. Apologies that changed shape depending on who was listening. Brent sent messages that swung between threats and bargaining. I didn't respond. I spent my mornings walking slowly around my neighborhood, rebuilding strength. I spent my afternoons at Lily's school events when Claire couldn't make it. I spent my evenings reading to Jonah when he asked, Grandpa, why is Mom mad at you? I never told them the sentence. Not yet. Children shouldn't carry adult cruelty. Claire's world cracked in places she hadn't expected. Denise put her on leave pending review. Friends stopped calling. Brent's parents stopped helping them financially. Brent grew resentful and loud. Claire finally learned what it feels like when the people you rely on decide you are no longer worth the effort. And me? I learned what it feels like to be alive without begging for scraps of love. Here's the part people will argue about. I didn't sue her. I didn't drag her through court. I didn't make it a legal spectacle. I made it a human one. I made her hear her own sentence in a room full of witnesses and watch it boomerang back into her life. I moved her out of my home. I cut off my help. I kept my door open for my grandchildren, not for the woman who would have closed my coffin and gone back to her meeting. Now I'm sitting at my kitchen table again, the same rug under my feet, the same coffee steaming in my mug. And I'm asking you, was I wrong for turning her cruelty into a mirror she couldn't look away from?
My grandpa's words really happened. I believe him. If you want more true tales like this, hit subscribe.